Football has always been a big part of my life. In my small hometown, Sundays were all about watching the game. My dad would make his special nachos, and we'd cheer so much that we lost our voices. When I moved to the city for my dream job at a consulting firm, I didn't leave my love for football behind. My co-workers quickly learned how much I loved my team, thanks to my coffee mug, the little flag on my desk, and the matching tie I wore on game days. I worked directly with several clients, building strong relationships over the years. One client in particular became something of a friend. We'd often grab dinner or drinks after our meetings, and football was a frequent topic of conversation. He knew how much I loved my team and how I'd never been able to afford tickets to see them play in a championship game. Fast forward to last season when my team made it to the championship for the first time in years. I was beyond excited, watching every playoff game with the intensity of a coach on the sideline. The morning after we secured our spot in the big game, my client texted me congratulating me about my team making it and expressing how excited he was for me. I had no idea that behind the scenes, something amazing was happening. My client had access to company tickets for the championship game and decided to give them to me as a thank you for all my hard work on his account. These weren't just any tickets, they were premium seats at the 30-yard line. He passed them along to my boss, who was the senior partner on the account, to surprise me with. The championship game came and went. We lost, which was heartbreaking, but I still cheered from my couch with friends. A few days later, I met with my client for our regular meeting. Afterward, over drinks, he brought up something unexpected. During our conversation, he asked me why I hadn't gone to the game, mentioning that he heard someone else was in my seats. Confused, I asked him what game he was talking about. He responded with surprise, saying he meant the championship game. He explained that he had given my boss those premium tickets for me as a gift. My jaw literally dropped. I had no idea what he was talking about. I told him I didn't have tickets to the championship and asked what tickets he meant. The client looked shocked and told me to discreetly ask around at the office about it. Back at work, I learned from one of our administrative assistants that my boss had given a pair of championship tickets to another client as a gift from our company. I was furious. These weren't just any tickets. They were meant for me to see my team in the championship. I could have confronted my boss directly, but I realized something important. It was the client who had noticed I wasn't there. If I let him handle it, there would be no blowback on me professionally. So I texted my client thanking him for thinking of me with those seats and explaining that they appeared to have been given to another client of our firm. He immediately replied with shock, telling me to pretend he never told me and that he would handle the situation himself. A few days later, our firm was asked to come down for a meeting at the client's office. My boss and I flew out together. He had no idea what was about to happen. When we arrived at the conference room, all the usual people were there, plus a woman I didn't recognize. My client immediately went into action. He introduced my boss to Stephanie from their marketing department, who wanted to sit in on the meeting. Then he turned to me and suggested that I must already know her from the championship game. Stephanie looked confused and said she didn't think we'd met there, asking if we had and apologizing if she'd forgotten. My client jokingly asked Stephanie how much she had to drink at the game since we were supposedly sitting right next to her. I knew exactly what was happening and played along perfectly, telling my client apologetically that I wasn't at the game and asking if he was thinking of someone else. By this point, my boss was visibly uncomfortable, looking like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Stephanie continued the act, saying that people from Competitor Corp were in the other seats. She then questioned why their company had given seats to those competitors, asking if there was some project with them that she wasn't aware of. My boss started to stammer, barely getting out a sound, before my client directly asked him if he had given those tickets to me as instructed. My boss turned bright red and scrambled for an excuse, suggesting that I wasn't able to make it, so I must have given the seats to someone else. He looked at me desperately, clearly hoping I'd cover for him. I acted surprised and asked what he was talking about, turning to my client with confusion and asking if he had really given me tickets to the championship game. My client raised his voice, explaining to my boss that Those tickets were a personal thank you gift from him to me, and demanding to know if my boss had given them to someone else, specifically another client. My boss weakly suggested that maybe something got mixed up in the office. The silence that followed was deafening. My client then calmly packed up his things. He announced that the meeting was over, told me that he apparently owed me a thank you gift, and invited me to lunch. He extended the invitation to Stephanie as well. Then he told my boss that he needed to evaluate their relationship and instructed him to go back home and expect to hear from them the following week. When my boss suggested joining us for lunch, Stephanie shut him down, saying it wasn't a good idea. She asked the receptionist to escort my boss out. As soon as he was in the elevator, we all burst out laughing. Stephanie wasn't actually from marketing. She was just an employee who my client had recruited for his masterful setup. She ended up joining us for lunch and turned out to be a fellow fan of my team. During lunch, my boss texted me desperately, insisting that I needed to cover for the firm and saying we would discuss it when I got back. Following my client's instructions, I waited a couple hours before responding that my boss should expect 1. Invoices for the resale value of the championship tickets, over $10,000, plus our expensive lunch. 2. A direct apology to me. 3. A written apology to the client's company for what amounted to theft. And 4. A promise that the client would only work with me or another partner, never my boss again. This caused quite a stir at the firm. Surprisingly, I came out looking great because it appeared I had tried to save the client relationship despite being wronged. My boss lost his profit share on any work with that client, and the other partners made him pay the invoices out of his own pocket. I still don't understand what my boss was thinking. Did he really believe the client would never mention those premium tickets to me? I eventually left the firm for a better position a few months later. The client terminated their relationship with the firm the following year. I'm still disappointed about missing that championship game, but the look on my boss's face during that meeting, almost worth it. Stepping into the fancy department store, I had mixed feelings. After spending 4 years in the military, including 2 deployments, being back home still felt unfamiliar. The sights and sounds I once knew seemed different now, but I was grateful to return. My unit had been through a lot and I had lost friends along the way. Coming home wasn't easy, but I was ready to start over and build a new life as a civilian. My first paycheck as a veteran had just cleared, and I decided I deserved to treat myself to something nice. Nothing too extravagant, just a good quality jacket or maybe a pair of boots that weren't standard issue. I was wearing my casual clothes, jeans, a plain t-shirt, and my old sneakers. Comfortable but nothing fancy. When I was browsing through the racks, I noticed a woman staring at me from across the aisle. I didn't pay much attention to it, assuming she was just another shopper who had her own problems to deal with. I continued to look for something that caught my eye, trying to ignore her gaze. But soon enough, she walked up to me and started speaking. Her voice was filled with disdain as she asked if I knew how much the store cost to maintain. She went on to say that the prices were exorbitant and only people with money should be shopping there. She finished by telling me that my kind should not be shopping there at all. Her words stung, as she had clearly singled me out as someone who didn't belong there because of my appearance. Her tone and attitude were incredibly rude and disrespectful. I felt humiliated and unwelcome in the store, and I couldn't understand why she had targeted me. I was taken aback by her words. I had just put my life on the line for this country, and I couldn't believe someone would say something like that to me. I looked at her and told her as calmly as I could that I was a proud military soldier who had served this country for many years, and that I deserved to shop wherever I pleased. I tried to keep my voice calm and level. The last thing I wanted was to cause a scene my first week back home. She scoffed at my mention of military service. She told me that if I were successful, I wouldn't be in the military. She added that only losers join the military because they can't get real jobs. Her voice was getting louder, and I noticed other shoppers starting to look our way. A store employee hovering nearby looked uncomfortable but wasn't stepping in. I explained that I was just trying to buy some clothes and wasn't bothering anyone. She responded angrily that I was bothering her. She claimed that people like me bring down the whole atmosphere of the place. She insisted the store was for successful people, not government charity cases. I'd faced enemy fire with more respect than this woman was showing me. I suggested that she should walk away now. She refused, telling me not to tell her what to do. She boasted about spending thousands at the store every month and claimed they knew her there. She called me a nobody who had wandered in off the street. Her face was getting red and she was practically shouting. I decided this wasn't worth it. I'd faced enough conflict overseas. I didn't need it at home too. I told her I was going to leave and wished her a good day. I turned to walk away, but she followed me, still shouting. She told me to walk away, saying I didn't belong there anyway. She told me to go back to whatever hole I had crawled out of. When I was walking toward the exit, I felt a sudden sharp pain in my shoulder. She had actually punched me. I turned around in shock and asked if she had just hit me. Instead of answering, she swung at me again. This time I caught her fist mid-air. Years of combat training kicked in automatically. I twisted her arm just enough to control her movement, careful not to hurt her, and guided her down to her knees. I called out for someone to get a manager. A store employee rushed over, along with what looked like a security guard. I explained that the woman had assaulted me and I was just defending myself. As soon as I loosened my grip, she yanked her arm away and lunged at me again, screaming incoherently. She charged at me full speed. I sidestepped and used her momentum to flip her over my shoulder, a standard self-defense move I've been taught. She landed on the floor with a loud thud. She lay there motionless for a moment, then started sobbing dramatically. By now, a small crowd had gathered and several people were filming with their phones. The store manager arrived and asked what had happened. Before I could answer, she started wailing. She accused me of attacking her and demanded that I be arrested. A bystander spoke up, saying that wasn't what happened. They explained they had seen the whole thing and that she had hit me first, and then charged at me. Another bystander mentioned they had recorded everything on video. They confirmed she had been harassing me and then physically attacked me. The manager looked at me with concern. He asked if I was all right and mentioned they had called security and the police. I assured him I was fine and that I hadn't wanted any trouble. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. They took statements from me, the store staff, and several witnesses. They also reviewed the security camera footage. The officer told me I was free to go, explaining it was clearly self-defense. He mentioned they would be having a conversation with the lady about assault charges. As I was leaving, I heard the paramedics arrive for her, who was still lying on the floor claiming severe injuries. One of the store employees followed me out. They thanked me for my service and apologized for what had happened. They explained that the management wanted to offer me a store discount card as an apology for my experience that day. I accepted the card with a nod of thanks. I never found out what happened to her after that day, and honestly, I didn't care to know. I had spent enough time fighting battles overseas. I didn't need to keep fighting them at home. 3 months into our separation, I was at my wit's end. Every divorce agreement I proposed was rejected outright. I kept trying to find something she would accept, but nothing was good enough. Living in a no-fault state, I knew she was entitled to a fair share, not everything, just fair. But fair wasn't in her vocabulary. For years, I had been the doormat in our relationship. I paid the bills, handled the responsibilities, and bent over backward to keep her happy. When I finally decided I'd had enough, she couldn't believe I was actually standing up for myself. I'm pretty good with legal documents, so I understood early on that I would likely be paying alimony. That wasn't the issue. The problem was that nothing I offered satisfied her. She wanted everything on her terms. Anytime I asked what she would accept, she'd change the subject or start an argument about something completely unrelated. After sending proposal after proposal, I realized I needed to keep a record of everything. Email became our only communication method. I wasn't cutting her off financially either. I had moved my direct deposits to a separate account but still maintained her weekly cash flow and paid all the bills. My final offer during this period was heavily unbalanced in her favor, splitting the cars, one each, me taking all the debt including her student loans, paying her $3,000 to $4,000 monthly for a year, and giving her all our possessions. I would walk away with just my car, my dogs, some tools, and clothes. Her response was that it still wasn't good enough for her. 3 months into this frustrating back and forth, I finally convinced her to meet with a mediator. This was the second time we'd seen each other since splitting up. She was staying with her sister. The mediator started by explaining the rules and having us sign agreements. One important term: we wouldn't file any other legal paperwork while in mediation. The mediator would file the final documents on our behalf once we reached an agreement. As the mediator asked basic questions, my ex kept derailing with emotional manipulation attempts. I decided to gray rock her, ignore the emotional bait, and only speak directly to the mediator. Every question resulted in her launching into irrelevant topics. The peak of absurdity: she literally crawled across the table to stick her face in mine, trying to force me to engage with her ranting. The mediator finally called a timeout, reminded her of the rules she agreed to, gave us homework, and scheduled our next meeting for 2 weeks later. 3 days later, I got served with a court summons for a spousal support hearing. The summons claimed I had only given her $130 in 3 months. Complete lie and a direct violation of our mediation agreement. The mediator called a conference with both of us and told her she needed to withdraw the complaint for mediation to continue. She refused, insisting that she knew her rights. The mediator ended his involvement and refunded us the unused portion of his fee. Time to prepare for court. I printed 3 months of bank statements and highlighted every transfer to her, every bill paid on her behalf, every ATM withdrawal from her card, even the toll bills she racked up. The total: over $13,000. My stack of evidence was thick. I made an Excel spreadsheet summary as a cover sheet and looked up the spousal support rules again. In our state, it's 40% of the income difference between spouses. She was currently getting about 72% of my pay when you factored in all her bills. Court day arrived. While waiting in the hallway, she sat next to me and started ranting. To avoid engaging, I began writing down everything she said on the back of my folder. When she realized what I was doing, she huffed and accused me of writing down her words just to make my friends hate her. She then moved a few seats away and stayed quiet until we were called in. The court officer, not a judge, just someone authorized to handle these matters, began with the standard legal proceedings, then asked my ex if she had anything to add to her complaint. She launched into a wild speech about all my supposed faults and how mean I was for divorcing her. She even claimed that I obviously didn't need any of the money because I was just going to live somewhere simple and cheap anyway. When it was my turn, I handed over my stack of evidence with the summary sheet on top and began going through each item. My ex interrupted constantly to explain why each payment shouldn't count. The officer repeatedly asked her to stop interrupting, to no avail. After reviewing everything, the officer addressed me. She told me that this court process was to ensure both parties were doing the right thing. She gestured at my stack of paperwork and said all of this needed to stop right now. She explained they would garnish my paychecks for the amount specified by law and send that to my ex instead. My ex looked smug. She didn't realize this was exactly what I wanted. We got into the calculations. I asked for a couple of adjustments: to keep paying her car payment directly, since I had co-signed to protect my credit, and to keep paying the insurance for the same reason. The officer agreed to both. My ex continued looking pleased, clearly thrilled at the idea of getting a court check directly. Everything wrapped up. We signed papers, I handed over the first payment check, and the officer went to make copies. I asked if I could wait elsewhere and got approval with a knowing side eye at my ex. The officer gave me my paperwork first, saying it might take a few minutes for my ex to get her paperwork, but I was free to go. I took the hint and left immediately. The moment I got to my car, I called my cell phone carrier. I told them I needed to remove a line from my account. When they asked if she wanted to set up her own plan, I responded that I couldn't answer that, but I was obeying a court order to remove her from my accounts. The carrier simply acknowledged and proceeded with the removal. I methodically worked down every subscription I was paying for that she used. I had all the account numbers and customer service numbers right in front of me from my court documents. I was driving home when the barrage began. Emails, texts from her sister's phone, calls, all demanding to know what I was doing. I grinned and ignored them all. After an hour or so, she stopped. Then, a few hours later, I received an all-caps email with a screenshot of the Netflix inactive account message. She expressed her shock that I had even cancelled Netflix. I admit I giggled. The fallout continued. A month later, after realizing how much less she was getting after winning her case, she filed an appeal. It was denied for lack of grounds. A month after that, she filed a complaint claiming I wasn't paying her car payment, just an excuse to get back into court. By this point, I had a lawyer. We went to court while she joined by phone. Before calling her, the officer told my lawyer that my ex was a piece of work. That validation will always stay with me. The call went predictably. My ex made irrelevant rants. The officer kept shutting her down and finally asked for proof that I wasn't paying the car payment, while holding statements showing I had paid. My ex practically screamed that she just knew I wasn't paying it so I could hurt her. The officer replied that she was holding proof that I had paid and was satisfying my legal obligation. She then dismissed the complaint and hung up on my ex mid-protest. The divorce took another 10 months with plenty more drama. In the end, I wound up paying even less alimony than the initial spousal support, and only took on about 60% of the debt. My only regret was losing my dogs to her. They were getting old, and I still miss them every day.